But first, new concerns about President Biden's ability to handle another term in office. Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson is at the White House tonight.
Lisa, President Biden declined to give a Super Bowl interview, but he did take to social media to share something that's bothering him, and he thinks millions of other Americans, too.
The Super Bowl is Sunday. If you're anything like me, you like to be surrounded by a snack or two while watching the big game. You know, when buying snacks for the game, you might have noticed one thing. Sports drinks bottles are smaller. A bag of chips has fewer chips, but they're still charging it just as much. I've had enough of what they call shrinkflation. It's a ripoff. The American public is tired of being played for suckers. I'm calling on companies to put a stop to this.
Earlier, President Biden's personal attorney defended the president's mental capacity, which was disparaged in the special counsel report.
This is a report that went off the rails. It's a shabby work product. I recall from that interview a president who engaged with the questions very directly and gave his best recollection.
In an email to donors, the First Lady defended her husband, writing, "We should give everyone grace, and I can't imagine someone would try to use our son's death to score political points. Joe is 81, that's true, but he's 81 doing more in an hour than most people do in a day. His age, with his experience and expertise, is an incredible asset, and he proves it every day." The Washington Post reports Biden's aides think the report mischaracterized the president's mental acuity, writing, quote, "Her's description of Biden's demeanor as that of a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory would infuriate Biden's aides, who saw it as sharply at odds with what occurred as the president sat for voluntary questioning. In the view of Biden's team, the interviews proceeded in a routine, even dry manner." A new ABC poll says 86% of Americans think Biden is too old to be president. James Carville thinks the president's age is one of the reasons he and his staff decided against giving the Super Bowl interview.
It's the biggest television audience, not even close, and you get a chance to do a 20, 25-minute interview on that day, and you don't do it. That's a kind of sign that the staff or yourself doesn't have much confidence in you. There's no other way to read this.
President Biden will meet Jordan's King Abdullah here at the White House tomorrow, 2 weeks after those 3 soldiers were killed in his country. Lisa?
Thank you, Lucas. So, Joey, we just heard from James Carville there. He said, look, massive TV audience, right? This clearly signifies that this White House does not have confidence in Joe Biden. This is at a time where so many Americans don't believe that he has the fitness, the mental fitness to do the job. His own Department of Justice does not. Will he regret turning down this pre-Super Bowl interview?
I don't know if he'll regret it, because if you can't do it well, it's just like the press conference after the report came out. If you can't do it well, it's only doing more damage. I mean, it's a perfect opportunity to try and fix some damage. It's a perfect opportunity to come out, look sharp, use whatever opportunity to rest you can and prep. But if he doesn't have the stamina to do it, or if he doesn't have the interest to do it, or if his team just doesn't think he can, I would forego it as well. And really, we're sitting here and we're going over and over about, is this guy too old? The American people, no matter what politics you like, have seen him for almost 4 years now. We know he struggles to recall things. He struggles to know where he is sometimes. He shows all the signs that we all see in our families and churches and communities of people that are getting elderly, and it's starting to affect them. It's up to each individual voter now to decide how much that matters.
Well, and Lisa, I want to dig into this ABC poll that Lucas referenced a little bit more. So 86% of adults have concerns about Joe Biden's ability to serve, including 73% of Democrats. And so now Biden surrogates like Senator Chris Coons have this to say. This is their defense.
Press coverage focuses relentlessly on things that don't represent Joe Biden's real body of work. You can push towards that kind of result. That poll should have been about who's actually working to secure our border. Joe Biden, what that poll could have been about is who understands that our alliances keep us safer. Joe Biden, the idea that somehow Joe Biden forgot the date of his son's death is offensive and appalling. And what you should be focused on, in my view, what that poll should have focused on, what our nation should focus on.
I mean, at least it's pretty hard for someone to defend a poll where 86% of Americans have concerns with Joe Biden's ability to do the job for a second term. Is that kind of messaging effective?
Well, I think the Democrats right now are doing the best that they possibly can with what they have, honestly, because the message that the senator is sending there is that this is a creation of the media and that you can ask better questions, right? Focus on the issues. Well, ABC News did focus on the issues. In fact, later on in that poll, you see Biden losing to Trump to the issues that are most important to Americans. On the economy, Trump beats Biden 12 points. On immigration, 18 points. On crime, 13 points. Now, Biden does beat Trump on abortion, climate change, and health care, but Americans are telling us the most important things to them are crime, immigration, and the economy, and he continues to lose. And Democrats, again, doing what they can, best they can with what they.
Well, yeah, those are big issues that Americans are seeing with their own eyes, right? They realize that crime's getting worse. They're seeing what's happening at the southern border, so they can't really gaslight us on that. You know, so Tom, Joe Biden might not be doing the Super Bowl interview, but a little birdie told me you might be doing one. Let's listen to this exchange with Greg Gutfeld.
It's like a 3-minute interview. I mean, I think most of the questions are like, who are you rooting for? What are you eating? You know, Tom, I just came up with a great idea. You should do, at the halftime of the Super Bowl, do a live on X, a 3-minute interview.
I might have to do it. Well, we'll see what we can do, Greg.
So, Tom, you might have to do it.
You know, I said that on the show, and I thought this whole thing's going to blow over. I'll be home watching the Super Bowl. Everyone will forget what Greg said. Nobody forgets what Greg said. Every day since then, people have been tweeting, when's the interview? You're going to do the interview. Finally, I said, okay, we're going to do the interview. Joey's going to help me. We're going to do it at halftime. Of
hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
Hard-hitting
But we're going to take questions from the American people. So Sleepy Joe, my version of Joe, is actually going to take real questions from real people, and we'll see how he answers them.
What if you're just a better Joe Biden than Joe Biden?
You know what?
Maybe the Democrats will knock on your door, say, "Hey, we need you to come in. Coach is calling you in."
It's always the risk we have to take.
Well, and also we laugh, but these questions might be harder than what Joe Biden actually gets asked. But the funny thing about where we are right now is even the media is like, oh, we might have a problem here with Joe Biden. So this is what the New York Times says. This is a headline from them. It says, yes, Biden's age matters. Biden can't count on Trump's unpopularity anymore. And then this is from a Politico article. Dems plead with Biden to do more, not less. Media as doubts grow about his capacity for the job. And then also, this is a quote from that same article. It says this: top party operatives are warning Biden aides that the president cannot retreat in response to the special counsel report that fueled concerns over his age and mental faculties. They say President Joe Biden, having largely shied away from the interviews and press conferences, needs to be out in the public far more. But Elisa, when that happens,
right,
he mixes up presidents. He has talked to European leaders who have been dead for a really long time. So, yeah, I don't know. They're in a little bit of a pickle here, aren't they?
They are, and his advisors obviously trying to figure out what to do. And there's a bigger question: is even if they do figure out what they think is best, there's a question of whether or not the president will listen, because the gaffes are increasing in number and in frequency. And to Joey's point, let's say he did come out and try to do more, he could make matters worse, which is what we saw in that 8 p.m. news conference that wasn't planned, and he showed up to defend himself and just drove home the point.
All right, I'm going to take it around the horn real quick. Does Joe Biden, is he going to be the guy for Democrats, or does he drop out?
I think it's undecided. I think it's less likely today than it's ever been.
Tom?
I have been saying consistently, no, he's staying in. This is what people do now. They stay in. You know he wants to, regardless of what his advisors are saying. But if I were a Democratic strategist, I would make it all about Joe's age now. The Democrats are all talking about the age issue. They're not shying away from it. Jill's talking. They're talking about it so much, his biggest weakness. It makes me think they want to ride this out at the last minute, bring in some other Democrat, and then the age issue is gone. Oh, and then the voters are going to be tricked, and then, their biggest weakness will be gone. If I were a strategist, I would plan that.
Elisa, is this elderly man with a poor memory, as the Department of Justice stated, what happens? Does he stay in?
I don't know. I mean, I cover, I don't predict, but I think this chatter is at a fever pitch now, so we'll be watching.
We have a smart woman here. That was very diplomatic. I'm not playing this game, Lisa.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.